Reports suggest holiday clothing sales could be weaker than expected, as some factory owners say they're seeing big drops in retailers' holiday orders. And lastly, is the era of unlimited returns online coming to an end? Non-refundable items are now popping up in even more places. Here to make sense of it all, Bryan Gildenberg, Managing Director of Retail Cities, and Sandra Campos, founder of Fashion Launchpad and a CNBC contributor. Welcome to both of you. Let me begin with you, Sandra, and ask you, what about this matter of shrinkage, i.e., the thought that companies are losing a lot of money to shoplifting, but it's somehow going to turn around?
Well, they have been losing a lot, and we know that a lot of that has come from organized crime. But for the most part, there was an imbalance in the increase of sales versus the number of employees that were actually hired in stores. So it was an increase of 42% in sales, 19% of employees. So there's just an imbalance there that you're not going to be able to keep organized crime at bay for that. There was also more inventory that was moving through the retail system due to increased demand during the pandemic and through more increase in online sales. And then the last thing is really bookkeeping mistakes that were happening, because retailers very quickly turned on buy online, pick up in store and other technologies that were helping them create less friction with the consumer, but it was actually new for them. So because of that, in this year, retailers are focused on profitability, focused on these operational efficiencies, so they can actually have better profits and better performance overall. So I do think that that's going to be impacted in a better way, in a more positive way this year.
Bryan, what's your reaction to this new note from UBS where they think shrink has gotten so bad that maybe it can be good again? They say that improvement will be an investable theme in the back half of this year and into 2024. Are we really turning a corner and tackling this problem?
I'm never a huge fan of the idea that things have gotten so bad that they can't get worse. So as an investment thesis, maybe. But I think there's a couple of really important things to keep in mind. Number one, labor, to Sandra's point, is really the issue here from an operations point of view. And until the retailers can hire more people, that's going to be the challenge. I think the UBS report pointed out that they're spending more on labor, but that's mostly on wages. More expensive people don't prevent shrink, more people prevent shrink. And I think that's a big issue. I think the other piece, which I do think is interesting, are the efforts that the sellers of merchandise that's being taken by organized crime are making to prevent and curtail that. They mentioned the Inform Act, which is requiring marketplaces to get better traceability on third-party sellers. And I think Amazon in particular is doing a lot of work on this front to try and limit the ability of stolen merchandise to be resold in their ecosystem. So I think that's an important step. But I'm with a client today that's in a fairly high shrink category in the stores, and I think that they found the idea that I was going to be on talking about how shrink was getting better to be not quite accurate, given their experience.
You want to elaborate at all on that? I mean, it's highly debated in New York as well, where there are efforts by the retailers want more technology and more systems to try to help this problem, and they say they're not getting the help that they need.
Yeah, I think it's still a struggle right now. I think it's particularly acute. I also think too that the retailers are going to invest in solutions to try to prevent shrink, but those solutions often have a deleterious effect on sales. And if you've been to a store in New York, you know what that means. If everything's under lockup, it's hard to sell things. So so I think there's a real factor here that this problem's probably going to stay bad for a while. I might humbly suggest that this report might have been a tiny bit premature.